I'm Pastor Vicky. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. If you're a guest with us this morning, please fill out your Connect card so that we can give that donation to the Emmanuel Care Center in your honor. Also, I wanted to talk with you a little bit, just to follow up on trivia night. It was those folks from the Churchill that won trivia night. So we're not going to invite them next year, okay? We can't win when they show up, so, well. So today I want to talk to you just for a minute about our discipleship groups that we're going to be starting. One of the things that we know is that being a church together is not just about worshiping together, but it's about all of us becoming disciples of Jesus Christ and taking one step closer to Christ, one step closer to God, one step closer to each other. And so we are beginning these discipleship groups that are going to be small groups, but they're going to be really small groups, like maybe 4 or 6 people that meet a couple times during the months, but just hang out and do life together. And so on the back of your Connect card, there's an opportunity for you to mark if you're interested in being part of one. Just try it out. Just try an experiment and say, hey, you know, these people are a little weird, but they're my kind of weird, so maybe this won't be so bad, right? Just mark on that, and we'll find a group for you. It's just going to be an opportunity for us to just kick back, relax, and do life together. And I just want to let you know that Shane is going to be coordinating that as our discipleship coordinator, and he's prepared a little bit of an explanation for why this is so important in our lives.
If you've been around a church long enough, then you've probably heard the word disciple. But what is a disciple? Well, being a disciple of Jesus, which is what we're supposed to be as Christians, means following him by witnessing what he did and imitating his life. Becoming a disciple of Jesus does not happen by accident or osmosis. Being a disciple is an intentional activity that takes time and effort, but the payoff is absolutely worth it. I want to share with you a story of intentional discipleship as told to me by one of our church leaders, Karen Fisher. This is what she said. I have attended many Bible studies, Sunday school classes, and other small groups. I even taught an adult Sunday school class for a few years. I learned a lot from all of those classes, but I always felt something was missing. I could never figure it out. Well, 2 years ago, Cornerstone started. One of the first studies we did was on Philippians. We didn't rush through it. If anyone had a question, we stopped and discussed and searched for an answer. No question was off limits and no answer was wrong. I found that when we question the word, we have a better understanding of the word. Cornerstone was the first time that I felt I was being led by God to learn his word. That is what I was missing. Karen went slow. She searched. She questioned to find understanding. She was literally going one step closer and being transformed by being intentional about her growth, and in the process, she was becoming a disciple of Jesus Christ. So, now you know what a disciple is, but so what? Why should you care? Well, you should care because we're forming groups to help you take your next step to become a disciple of Jesus. Discipleship groups meet for about an hour twice a month. You'll gather at a location outside the church walls because that's where life happens. Plus, Jesus spent most of his time with his disciples outside among the people. Your group might meet at a coffee shop, you might meet at a restaurant or some other place, but you'll always meet at the same place. Jesus was intimately involved in the lives of his disciples. Sharing life together is one of the main purposes of your discipleship group. You'll talk about what's been going on in your life, and by actively sharing your lives with each other, you'll learn how to navigate the struggles and the joys of life the way Jesus did. If becoming more like Jesus and taking the next step in your faith is as important to you as it is to me, then let's talk. I can give you more information on the specific discipleship groups we have going. Jesus is committed to helping you come closer to him. Now you just need to take the next step. Let's take that step together and join a discipleship group today.
So you can mark the back of your card. You can talk to Shane. I hope that you'll take the opportunity to be a part of that. And now we're going to continue on in our series on This Is Us. We are providing counseling for anybody who's mourning the loss of Jack. And here for the rebuttal from last week is Shane.
Hello. Are we good? Good morning. How you doing? Wow. Good morning. How you doing? Thank you. I was about to just leave. Y'all don't want to be here? Then what's the point? So, yeah, last week Pastor Vicky talked about mutual submission, and she read from Ephesians 5, and this is going to be kind of not a rebuttal. It'll be an extension of that, with a little bit of a focus toward family. Specifically, I'm talking to most of the guys in here. The makeup of this service is a lot more even. At the 9:30, I had about 75% women, 25% guys, and I was like, I have no idea how this is going to go over. But so I'll start it this way. Raise your hand if you're a husband. Awesome. Raise your hand if you might want to be a husband someday. Thanks, James. Raise your hand if you know a husband, or you have a relative who's a husband, or you might have actually met or talked to or looked at a husband one time. All right, good. Then you're all going to get something out of this. I will start this. It's going to get a little heavy at points. So I want to start us off with a moment of levity. Go ahead and show that picture. All right, I don't know if you can read it, but up there we have from Grey's Anatomy, I don't remember his name, because of course you would know. All right, my death was the saddest in history, and there's Jack Pearson saying, hold my crock pot. Oh, so sad. Did anybody not see the Super Bowl episode that cares, James? Okay, good, because spoilers, like huge, in this series, obviously, but I want to read the passage that I want to focus on today, and it was the one that says, for husbands, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her. I would say that we could probably all agree that family is important. I mean, one of the huge things here in Girard is family. Like, even more so than most of the other churches I've ever been at. Family is just, it's almost a religion by itself here in Girard. And so family is important, but the role of the husband in modern times has kind of taken, I won't say it's taken a hit, I would say it's altered somewhat. I've talked to guys this week and in weeks prior who, when we try to figure out what we are supposed to be as husbands, it's almost like, I don't know, like I'm the worst guy to talk to about like traditional gender husband roles, because I'm literally the housewife of my family. I work here, I go to seminary, but during the day, am the person who takes care of the kids. I clean the house, I do the cooking, you know, I do those traditional wife roles, you know? And so I have guy friends who are like, they always bust me on that, and I just, you know, I said, we don't live in that time, man, you got to get that out of your mind. The role of the husband, so with that in mind, like what can we say the role of the husband is? I would say the role of the husband has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with influence, okay? So we're going to reimagine the role of the husband that has nothing to do with gender, has everything to do with influence. We see in This Is Us examples of leadership, examples of the husband being the provider, being the bodyguard. I made a joke in the 9:30 service that my house, I'm the guy who takes out the trash. But yeah, oh, look at Joey's already sleeping. I'm sorry. Man, that didn't take long. But we see in This Is Us, we see examples of this. Jack leads Rebecca to adopt Randall as a baby. Randall leads his family to become foster parents. He also leads his family to bring in his biological father, William. So you see a lot of these leadership things where they get the family to do stuff. Jack chose to delay his dream of owning his own business so that he could provide a more stable financial situation for his family. Last week, Pastor Vicky talked about he sold his muscle car, which makes me sad. But he did that to get a not horrible station wagon, but I did the same thing. I had a huge pickup truck. I have a muscle car. You have to, I think, know how to work a little bit on one of those to actually be able to legitimately own one. And I know how to drive to the oil change place. But I had a big pickup truck, made me feel like a man. And then I had 3 kids, and I'm like, I need something that I just can't throw them in the bed of the truck. Which, by the way, last week when you were looking at that muscle car and you said, oh, where would you put the kids? I literally up in the loft said, that's a big trunk. Angela hit me. She didn't think that was funny. But we see all of these examples in the show of the traditional the traditional husband sort of lead the household model, okay? The problem with that, as I alluded to already, is that we don't really live in the TV world. We don't live in that world where everything is as clean cut as, especially in Jack's world. Jack, that show takes place in, 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Things were in flux then, but they were still pretty defined. You had one income. Jack was the income. He went out. Rebecca stayed home. She took care of everything. We don't live in that world anymore where one income works. Not usually, not unless, you guys paid more attention in school than I did. There's a pretty good chance then it might work, but it's tough. It's really tough. We've got families working all the time, mom and dad working, and so dad can't go to work all day, come home like, I worked. That doesn't fly anymore. Not that it ever should have, because if you're stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, you realize that you'd probably rather work 8 hours a day and then be able to call it quits. It's very tough. It's hard. So, but we don't live in that world. The gender roles are more in flux in terms of what it means. So, like I said, we're going to talk about how to reimagine the role of the husband. And I would say, biblically speaking, we have one role. Really, it boils down to one thing. A husband's job is to do one thing, and that is to be the leader of your household. Now, that idea has been manipulated and abused for a long, long time. When we think of leadership too often, and the reason why we think about it is because it still happens too often, is leadership is imposing power on somebody to make them do something else. I force you, I coerce you, whatever, to get you to do my will. Leadership has been seen as coercion or power to get somebody to do your will. But that is the worst way to lead. You will only lead people so far as let's put it this way. They will only do enough not to get in trouble if you lead that way. And we kind of all know what that looks like. When we were younger, I know when I was younger, I only ever did enough to not get caught. And it's because I had no loyalty to the family or to the rule system or to the power structure that was in place, because it was always dominance. You will do this thing. It's never inspired. Inspiration, that is what gets people to follow you. It creates followers rather than minions. So we're going to talk about how to redefine leading the household from a place of inspiration rather than power, rather than dominance. Okay, that's how. So husbands, put this in your mind. Your role is to lead your household. Here's how you do it. Okay? There are going to be two things. There are going to be two things, two ways. One, we're going to start with the first one, and the second one will build on it. But I cannot overstate the impact that if you're able to do these two things, how much the impact will alter your family. Like overnight, if you could do these things, the dynamic of your household will change. Now, I'm talking to the husbands, but everybody in this room, if you do these things, it will change your relationships, period. If you reciprocate this thing that I'm asking your husbands to do, I can't even, the imagination it takes to figure out exactly the change is mind-boggling. I see some younger folks in here. Listen to the words I'm about to say to you. Listen. If you internalize the two things I'm about to tell you guys, and you live your life from here on out with this, you will be the most influential, most charismatic people in your social groups. People will not just follow you, they will want to follow you. They will give you undying devotion because you've done these two things. And if that sounds big, it is. It's huge. Internalize this stuff because it's a game changer for you. The first thing is choose love, not hate. Choose love, not pain, I should say. Choose love, not pain. Now, what do I mean by that? That sounds nice and ethereal and kind of like opaque, Choose love, not pain. Here's the concrete example of how this works out in your relationship. Don't hurt your family even when they hurt you. Don't hurt your family even when they. I not like literally got like 4 looks like, right? What are you, stupid? I never do that. I would never do something like that. Oh, really? Have you never been in an argument with a significant other, a friend, a boyfriend, a wife, a husband, and they said something that hurt? They said something mean, nasty? What's the almost automatic response? Probably 95% of the time. It's a rebuttal. It's something that bites back just as much. It's this response we have. I think you're gaining a little weight there, sweetie. Yeah, well, your mom's stupid. Not that we've ever had that argument, I'm just saying. But that's an example, right? We don't want to lose, and especially if you're a guy in this situation, if your wife says something crushing to you or even slightly irritating, we load the pistol and we're ready to do battle. Right? We will not sit quietly and take that usually. What I'm saying is you should. You should. Just imagine if you were able to do that. If your wife told you were getting fat and you were like, oh, that's unfortunate. That sounds so ridiculous to put it that way, Doug. But let me give you an example of how this lives out in the show, right? Because Jack gives us a perfect example of how you're supposed to do this. Jack, here's the cool thing about Jack. For all of his flaws, his struggle with alcoholism, he hates his job, which I don't know that that's a flaw necessarily, but with all of the things that you could say are blemishes on Jack, which, by the way, Pastor Vicky, she overlooks all of those because he's so pretty. But for all of that, he still shows us a snapshot so many times. They write his character in such a way that he shows us really correct ways to behave in a relationship. Here's one example. The episode where Rebecca is out on tour with her ex-boyfriend in the band. She's singing and the thing. And Jack goes out to see her show. He drives 2 hours to go see the show. And he gets drunk and he ends up slugging the guy. Now Jack and Rebecca get home and they are having a fight. I mean, they are having a good, visceral, heartfelt fight. I'm watching that going, I know what that feels like. I've seen that one. Now, again, never in my house, but I've seen that play out before. They're going on, and at some point, Rebecca says to Jack, I just needed to have one thing in my life that was my own without you getting in the way. I literally said to the TV, get her. I was so mad for him. I was like, how dare she? After all you've done for her, how dare she? I was ready to fight. I couldn't believe it. How dare you? And you know what? Does anybody remember what he did? What he said? It wasn't a crusher. He did not load the gun. He didn't. He looked like he had been crushed himself. But instead of biting back, instead of saying something hurtful like your mom is stupid, which he could have, because, man, she's a wackaloon in that show, but he didn't do that. You know what he did? If you don't remember, he just stood there for a second and he just said, I never thought of myself as being in your way, Beck. He didn't argue the point. He didn't say, you're wrong, you're right. He simply said, I never saw it that way. You know why he did that? How he was able to do that? Because he looked across the way at this person that had just done damage to him, and he saw a person. He saw the woman that he loved. He saw the woman that he loved, and he could not hurt her back. Instead, he just said, man, I never saw it that way. He chose in that moment love over pain, even though he was hurting himself. As a husband, if my wife had just accused me basically of squashing her dreams, which hasn't played into my mind before. My wife's dream before she met me was to be a concert pianist. Yeah, she's so far from that now. And for a while, I was like, she settled.
So I understood that comment from her because I've always expected it to come, and it never has, thankfully. But in the moment when he got punched in the gut, instead of punching back, he just took it and said, wow, I never saw it that way. We have a biblical example of this in Jesus. We're going to probably get into this a lot more around Easter, but if you look at the Garden of Gethsemane story, from the point there where Jesus is in the garden before he gets betrayed and before his crucifixion and all that, Jesus is so stressed out because he sort of knows what's coming. Jesus is stressed out. He's so stressed that he's sweating. In Luke it says his sweat was like drops of blood. So whether he was actually sweating blood or he was just sweating a whole lot, like it was just pouring out, doesn't matter. He was super, super stressed. Now if you know the story, great. If you don't, I'm just going to give a little snapshots. You take from here in the garden, then Jesus gets betrayed, and then Jesus is on trial, and then Jesus gets flogged, scourged, almost to within an inch of his life, and then Jesus is paraded through the town toward the cross. Jesus put on the cross. At any point from the garden to the cross, Jesus could have lashed out. He could have bit back. He could have blamed others. He could have done literally anything any of us would have done in his same situation. He could have. But he never did. He never did. But he didn't stay silent either. Silence was not the way Jesus chose to show love during that situation. Do you know what Jesus did do? When choosing love over pain, instead of inflicting pain on us, on the people around him, Jesus, in the worst moment of his life, and I don't mean everything leading up to it, I mean the moment Jesus is hanging on the cross, knowing he's going to die. He's never coming off of there physically alive again, at least till later. But in that moment, Jesus says, he doesn't say, curse you, curse your family, I hate these people. Your mom is stupid. He says, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. In that moment, in the worst possible moment, Jesus shows love. He chooses love over pain. We have these really great examples from the show and from Scripture that tell us exactly what this looks like. In neither case was it easy for the person, because sometimes loving isn't easy, but it's always the right thing to do. If Jack in that moment had chosen to lash out at Rebecca and hurt her like she had just done to him, I wonder where their relationship would have gone. Sure, they could have written anything, but from a realistic point of view, it would have taken a lot longer to recover, I think. Now that scene leaves a ton of room for speculation, obviously. If you saw that episode, you know how that episode actually ends. Not in a good, positive, reaffirming way. Jack goes drinking. It hurt him so much that he went drinking. So his humanity showed there. He took that in and didn't lash it out, and he had to figure out another way to get it out. And it wasn't healthy. But he still did the right thing. He did the good thing. He led from a place of love and not pain. The second way to lead from a point of influence, from love, is to be present, not perfect. You can only choose love over pain if you're present. Be present, not perfect. Now, I'm going to take you on a little walk here on why trying to be perfect is the worst thing you could do. Okay, we try so hard to be something we can never become. Perfect. We weren't made to be perfect. We can't be perfect. We can't be perfect partly because perfection looks a little bit different for everyone. We can argue this sort of Greek idea that there's an abstract perfection out there, an image of perfection that exists that we sort of can get to. And we have placed some of that, some of those ideas, we look at God in that way. I'm not going to argue one way or the other against that. What I'm saying is that right here, right now, we are not God. We can't be that perfect, okay? But we try. But what I think is perfect might not be what you think is perfect. What I think is clean and unblemished, you might not think that. I think Angela is perfect. I think she's perfect. Her ex-boyfriend did not. He didn't think that was perfect. So he's still trying to achieve perfection because he missed the boat. Uh-oh. So we can't be perfect because we're hitting a moving target. It's not attainable. So guys, especially when we try to hit perfection and we fail, obviously, because we can't do it, let me put it this way. Here's how this looks. Basketball analogy for you. If you think you can't make the shot, you'll probably be less likely to try to take the shot. Yeah? That's what we do when we fail at perfection. We figure we can't get there, so why bother trying? But when we stop trying to attain that, we stop trying to improve, we stop trying to get better, what happens is we stop being mentally present for experiences in our lives. And why should we? Why should we care about the experiences if this one down here doesn't matter? Like, we stop trying to take the steps to get there, so we stop being mentally present. We just sort of check out, like, I'm not going to care about that step because, I can't, it doesn't matter. Our experiences stop having value to us because we're looking all the way down the road at where we can't get to. So all the little steps between don't matter. We don't think those steps lead anywhere worth being, so we don't care enough about taking them. This mental disconnect leads to a physical absence. We can't go somewhere our mind won't take us. So if I don't care about the experience, if I don't care about this step here, I'm not going to go there. I just won't be there. I won't be present. Worse than that, though, actually, I would say, maybe as bad, maybe not worse, than actually not taking the step is being forced to take this step without your mental consent. Because if you're forced to be somewhere you don't want to be, you start to be apathetic. If you're already apathetic when you get there, you become a danger to people. Apathy, by the way, just means not caring. If you don't care about where you are, your experience, yourself, you don't care about other people either. And that makes you dangerous. An apathetic heart is much more dangerous, much harder to start than a heart at war. Let's put it this way. I can eventually convince an enemy of mine to change their mind, probably, because they have passion, and passion can be altered. Passion can be changed. The direction of passion can be changed. But apathy, not caring, man, it is hard to kickstart that. That is why dying churches are dying, because pastors have to try and figure out how to kickstart apathetic hearts. That's what happens a lot of the time. And it's like, the analogy I used in the 9:30 service, is it's like trying to start a diesel engine that hasn't been started for 6 months in the Antarctic. If you don't know anything about that, it's really hard. It might happen, maybe, but it's probably not going to. It's very difficult. So if you fail to be present, you fail to care. That's where we are. We've taken these. Now you're in a place where you just don't care about the future. You don't care about the present. You don't care about yourself. You don't care about others. Where are you leading from? If you're trying to lead your household at that point, where are you taking them? That's a horrible place to lead. Disconnected husbands lead to disconnected spouses. Disconnected spouses lead to disconnected families. And when our families are disconnected, we lose our powers in number. We lose our power in numbers. That is why the family unit is important. And I'm not advocating here for one family structure over another. Biblically, we have dozens of family structures. But the one thing they all have in common is power in numbers. And it's because especially in the Old Testament, we see strong family ties, strong units, strong bonds, where it's all like they're all for one. They're all heading in the same direction because they're connected. But when we disconnect, husbands or head of household, whoever you are, when you disconnect from your experiences and the world around you, then your family eventually becomes disconnected and you lose that power. And that's when the family falls apart. That's when the family unit is a mess. And that is, we see that all over the place in our society today. Now, that some of you are ready to just pack it in, you're like, oh God, that sucks. That's so dismal. It is. It absolutely is. If you're trying to lead from a place of perfection, it will only end dismally. But what if? What if you took all that energy you try to put into being perfect and you put it into something you can actually do? And that's being present. Be present, not perfect. If you value presence over perfection, then you see each moment, each experience as an end unto itself. Instead of looking out that way to find your value, you're suddenly looking right here, finding value right here in this experience. This is important to me. I'm here right now doing this thing. Well, even if it's a bad experience, be present in the pain because it is doing something. If you value each experience as an end unto itself, it's seen as a step to be taken because the journey is what's important, not the goal. By the way, this is a metaphor for Christianity in its entirety. The journey is what's important. We call that in Methodist speak sanctification. It's the journey, each step. Why do you think we say one step closer all the time? Because it's the thing, right? Each moment, each experience is what's important to the next one. It's not the destination. When we see value in each moment, we want to be present in them all. And when we're present, we can act accordingly. Like some of you, I know you're thinking about this and you're thinking of big moments. The birth of a child. I was totally locked in for those. Nothing else mattered. I didn't care about what I was eating that night. I didn't care about the game that was on. I didn't care about anything but this thing that's happening right here. I remember the smells. I remember everything about that scenario, right? Everything. All the words that were said. Everything, because I was right there. I was fully in that moment. But what if we did that for other stuff? Like other things that we consider minor. I had an experience recently. I can't remember exactly if it was this week, last week. I was washing dishes. And if you've ever been in my house, here's my sink. It's really weird in the corner, but I have two windows that look out into my backyard. One is just a shot of my garage. The other one is kind of a shot of my driveway in the neighbor's house in their backyard. There's a fence they have. So I'm washing dishes, and I look over, and there's a squirrel on the fence staring right at me. It's the weirdest thing. Like, because it was just sitting there, like, staring at me, and I didn't know, like, what's it thinking? Why is that guy's head shaped like an egg? I don't know. But it was just, like, all of a sudden, though, in that moment, I just stopped. And I started to feel the warmth of the water on my hands and the sliminess of the soap in the water and the texture of the sponge. I was just really hyper aware of everything at that moment. And I was really at peace. It was super peaceful in that place. And by the way, if you've ever been to my house, you know peace is not a thing that exists at my house. With Carmen and Emmett and Tony running around. And they were, at that point, they were screaming. I don't know if somebody was choking somebody. I don't know what was going on. I didn't care because I was at peace right there because I was just fully. What if we did that so much more than we do? If we were present. That would be awesome. Now, Jack he's imperfect in the show. Obviously, we've already talked about that. But Jack's whole life was about being present for his family, his kids, his wife. He was always there. That's what he did, you know? That is what made him Jack. His presence is such a huge factor that his absence, the absence of his presence, still drives all the action of the show. If you watch the show, you know this is true. He was such a big influence in the lives of the people he touched that when he was gone, it still had an impact. I'll bet every one of you in this room can think of one person that's had that kind of impact on you. They were present. They were so present in your life that you'll never not do something without their influence, even when they're not around. Because of this presence, Jack was able to be the hero. I've been calling him the hero. He was the hero of the Pearson family. And this manifests most fully in the Super Bowl episode. Okay, you know, with the story with him, like the house is on fire, he has to go out and get Kate. Right? And he has the mattress and his hands are all burned. Oh man. I was like, dude, who would ever do that? That's crazy. I'm a dad, and I was like, I want to be able to say I would do that, and I probably would. But not because of that show. I probably would because of this. This same thing actually happened in my life. When I was 5, our house burned down from an electrical fire. We lived on a 2-story house, and they were doing rewiring the electric in the first floor, and one night it just caught fire. And me and my sister shared a room, so I'm 5, my sisters are 4 and 3. And my parents fly into our room, and they slam the door. And I remember hearing my mom say, she's like screaming, the house is on fire, the house is on fire. My dad, he's just like running around, like grabbing sheets off the bed and stuff. And he goes to grab the sheet off my sister's bed and realizes my youngest sister, Tina, 3 years old, isn't in the room. So as a dad right now, I can't even imagine the fear. I can't imagine what that would be like to have little Emmett. and this would be, by the way, in my house, this would be Emmett because the kid won't stay in his bed. But little Emmett out there, while we're all in here. So my dad flings open the door, leaves and shuts it. My dad tells the story. He told the story this way, that he went out there, he couldn't see anything. It was super smoky, just like in the show. Couldn't see anything. And he goes to go downstairs, knowing that if she's down there, she's already dead, because the fire had completely engulfed the downstairs already, and it was already mostly upstairs. He goes to go down there anyway because he's got to find her. And he trips over her at the top of the staircase. She was laying right across the stairway. He tripped over her and found her. And he brought her back. And then they tie sheets together, lower my mom down. She runs across the street to the neighbors. Within minutes, 20 neighbors, all standing at the bottom of this window. Now, they didn't have the clever idea to wrap around the thing like they did in the show. I saw that, I was like, oh, that's foresight. No, my dad dropped us from a 2nd-story window, right? Drops Tina first because she almost died. Apparently, she's got to go first. And then Tabby, the middle child, and then there's me. Now, I've seen this done twice already. So my natural response, I locked my arms and legs around his arms, and he's literally just trying to shake me off. And finally, he stops, realizing I'm not going to let go. And he just whispers. He pulls me up, and he whispers into my face like this. He looks me right in the face. He's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I have to do this, but it's going to be okay. And I guess I loosened up enough. One more time, and I was down. I still remember that fall. It's weird. 5 years old, I remember that fall. Because I also remember how much it hurt when that guy, my head hit the guy's shoulder or something on the way down. When he caught me. But they caught me. Now my dad's in the house all by himself. He's not going to jump. It was really, really high. Somebody went and got a ladder. He came down. He was out and safe. But I'm like, Jack, not that bright. because he ran back into the house to get the keys to his tow truck, which was next to the house, and he thought it was going to fall over. Like, they didn't have insurance. Oh, well, actually, knowing my dad, he might not have had insurance back then. But the point is this. I say that story. I had to give the whole thing because of this. After my dad died when I was 10, I started hearing stories about my dad, that he was a womanizer. I know this is a true thing because he lived with his girlfriend and their 2 kids when I was 8, and I spent most of my time there. I never made the connection until I was older. My dad was married 3 times. My mom was his 3rd wife. He cheated on them all. My dad was a womanizer. My dad was an alcoholic. My dad was a drug addict. My dad was all these things. And all these stories, these are the stories I heard growing up after he died from people who wouldn't say it to his face while he was alive. But these are the stories. So eventually I got to a point where I thought of my dad. I was like, man, he wasn't that great of a person. And honestly, he wasn't that great of a person. But you know what I learned this week? This is what I learned this week in doing this message. You are what you are when you are needed the most by the people around you. Regardless of anything else you are or what you do. When it comes crunch time, when you are needed the absolute most, what you do in that moment defines you. So I go back to the story. And in the moment that my dad was needed the most, he was a hero. He was present. And he was our hero. Never again will I think about my dad being the horrible person that I was told he was. He was those things, but he was a hero. He was a broken hero. But he was my hero because he was there when we needed him. Again, we see this with Jesus on the cross. Jesus was present, and Jesus was our hero. He was the hero of the people that followed him, for sure, because he was there. And that is why presence is so important, because you have to be there in order to be the hero. You have to be there in order to choose love over pain. Love is cultivated and manifested through presence. I wrote that down. I liked it, so you're going to hear it a bunch of times now. Love is made manifest through presence. You have to be there. You have to be there in order to love. That is why it is super important. That is why it is so important for you to be here on Sunday mornings. You have to be present. If you're watching on the live stream, I'm talking to you. Get your butt to church. It's important. Being here is important. Presence is important because love is made manifest through presence. It's important for you to be a part of a small group. Why? Because love is made manifest through presence. You will not develop those relationships. You will not experience love. You will not be able to give love if you are not there. That is why it's important to be here and to be there. It's important for you to be available for each other because love is made manifest through presence. Let me put it a different way. Love is made real through presence. Love is made real through presence. I'm going to show you what presence looks like for Jack. Throw up that photo. That's the scene. That's the image when he opened his bedroom door and he saw the fire. Look at that face. In that moment, he had to decide if he was going to be there or not. And honestly, it was never a decision for Jack. It was instinct at that point because that's how he lived, in the moment, being present. Now, that's pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy. So I'm going to show you another picture of what presence can look like. That's Joe. That's Joe Carbon. That's Alyssa's husband, and that's little Joey. I look at that picture. I seriously look at that picture, and I want to be that guy. That's strength right there. That's presence. That's a guy who's going to choose love instead of pain always. I know that to be true. I can see it. That's what I want for you guys as well. I want you to choose love over pain, and you can only do that when you're present. Imagine what it would look like, husbands, if you did those two things. Just imagine if you did just those two things, what the dynamic of your family relationship would be. If you're their spouse, seriously imagine what it would be like to feel that. And then imagine what it would be like if you reciprocated that. It would be so amazing. I think it would look an awful lot like Jesus. I think it would look an awful lot like Jesus. Being love, showing love, and being present. And for you husbands, it would make you a hero. Seriously, it would make you a hero. And it sounds silly, but I know I want to be the hero of my family. I don't know any husband that doesn't want to be the hero of their family. You want to be a hero? Do those two things. Do those two things. Let's pray. Father, I want to feel your presence right now in this place. I know you're here. Please stir in my heart and in all of our hearts the realization that you are present. As I feel God in this place, I feel loved in this place. And it makes me want to love even more. My prayer for this congregation, and as we go out today, next week, forever, is that we live in each moment like it has value, so that we can love the people in our lives because we know they have value. I pray for all of the people who are separated right now from the one that they need to be most present. I pray that you would stir in the lives of those people. Reconnect them. Reconnect them with each other, with you. And let us connect with them as well, because we have power in numbers. We have your power in numbers. Lord, I pray and I thank you for the many strong men and women we have in this congregation who are already living out parts of this. I pray and thank you for those who are living out both parts, because those relationships are strong. I pray in the moments when they feel weak, in the moments when they find doubt, when they feel like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, Lord, I pray that you strengthen and embolden them. I pray all of this in Jesus' precious name.